This is a strange feeling. I actually want to praise Hoyoverse. Like, this game is legitimately great. It has tons of personality, great combat, and I'm getting ahead of myself. I should probably give context. I am someone who has a mixed history with Hoyoverse. I've pretty much played every game they've made, and while that may seem like I'm a huge fan, that's not really the case. Out of their 3 previous games, I've only ever really liked one of them, and that comes with a lot of caveats. Let's start at the beginning. I first played Honkai Impact 3rd before Genshin was ever even announced. Basically, I saw a meme video containing gameplay, thought it looked fun, and went to try it out. But I found that the gameplay was meh. I mean, it's flashy and has a lot of cool animations, but it's not really that deep. And the power creep was so huge that there were certain characters that basically didn't need to play the game at all. So I bounced off of it pretty quick. Then when Genshin Impact came out, I said, sure, I'm ready to be hurt again. So I installed it, and I came away feeling pretty much the same way I did with Honkai. Flashy combat, lacking substance. However, I tried returning to the game several times, with each time a growing frustration building with how Hoyoverse handled pretty much everything in that game. I'm not gonna get into that though, since this video is not about me hating on Genshin, no matter how much I want it to be. Let's just say its obsession with forcing me to log in on specific days of the week just to get what I want was a major factor. Then, when Star Rail came out, for some unknown reason, I decided to once again try it, because apparently, I have brain damage. But this time, I found myself not hating it, and actually quite enjoying it. I still play it semi-often and don't hate myself while doing so. Then, we get to Zenless. Now, I had no intention of playing this game as Dawn Trail had just come out, and I was pretty busy with that. However, if you know anything about Final Fantasy XIV, you should know that the only thing to really do when a new expansion drops is play the story, which I already did. Now, I could level alternate classes in order to get ready for the new raids to be released, but just leveling can get kinda boring after a while. So I needed something that I could play so I didn't get too burnt out on 14 before the actual content release. So I picked up ZZZ, since it was free, and like I said, their last release was a game I enjoyed. And when I did, well, it honestly blew my expectations away. Now, to be fair, my expectations were not that high, but hey, a win's a win. In any case, I'm going to give my honest opinions on a lot of parts of ZZZ. This isn't really going to be a typical review, it's just I have thoughts on this game and need to get them out of my head. But if you do want a quick, do I recommend this game, then yeah, I do. If you're a person that can deal with gacha mechanics, then go right ahead. Look, I'm going to get this out of the way now. I am very familiar with this genre, and I have what I like to call self-control. Mostly. But if you are someone who has problems spending too much money in the past, do not play this game. Zenless is a Hoyo game, and they know how to get people wailing. And while Zenless is not the worst in terms of its rates, it's certainly still pretty bad. But if you're like me and can resist selling your soul for anime girls, then go ahead. In fact, for the most part, if you're just doing story content, you really don't have to pull it all. All story missions set you up with a usually full team of characters that are all at level for the current story mission, which I think is pretty cool. Speaking of story though, I think it's intriguing. They are setting up some stuff that seems really cool to me, and the story seems to be breaking a lot of tradition with usual Hoyoverse games in a few ways. To me, Genshin's story has always been serviceable, but never really amazing, or bad, just serviceable. Star Rails is pretty good, but it's still not something I really want to gush over, and to be honest, there hasn't been as good a climax as the Bellabog boss fight yet. Wildfire is still the best song in the game, don't at me. But Zenless has changed up things enough for me to be intrigued. Change number 1. We have 2 main characters, who are both pretty much fully voiced. Aether, Lumine, Kalis, and Stell do talk occasionally, but both Bell and Wise talk, like, all the time, and they both have unique personalities. Bell is a little bit of a goofball, her dialogue being less serious and a bit more wacky, while Wise is a bit more reserved, with his jokes being more witty than silly. They feel distinct, and since they're both in the story and interacting with each other, we can see their relationship more. Change number 2. It feels less formulaic. Now, this one might just be subjective, but at least to me, it feels different in construction than other Hoyoverse games. You see, in both Genshin and Star Rail, there is a formula to how the story plays out. Step 1. You go to a new place, be it planet or nation. Step 2. You meet people from this area that tell you all about it. Step 3. Problem appears, you try to fix it. Step 4. Fail initially, but you discover the power of friendship, then you win. To me, Zenless has sort of broken this pattern a little bit because it feels like the entire story, at least so far, is connected to the other parts. Like in Genshin, there is the overarching plot of you trying to find your brother, but each time you go to a new nation, it's pretty much its own self-contained story. Really, when you arrive at a new nation, the shit that you did beforehand pretty much doesn't matter, because now you're in Sumeru, and you have to deal with whatever the shit's going on here now. But Zenless does it differently. And minor spoilers for Zenless Head if you want to avoid skip here. See, at a certain point in the story, you need to find a hacker that Nicole knows to decrypt some data from people who commissioned you in the previous chapter. She tells you that she hasn't had contact with her besides these strange blank text messages. So, you go to the source of the signal in order to find her and meet Victoria Housekeeping, who then work with you in this chapter to rescue the hacker. And to me, this feels so much more natural than Paimon flying up to you and being like, well, Paimon doesn't see your brother here. Why don't we get stuck into the political drama of this nation for months just to find out this nation's Archon knows jack shit about your missing twin? I got through it. Ooh. Anyways. If they continue to interweave previous story with the meeting of new characters like this, then I think it'll work out much better in the long run. How about we move on to another aspect? That being where the story takes place, the city of New Eridu. New Eridu is really cool. I love how this city has such variety in its different zones. Lumina Square feels large and open with lots of people, making it feel like a bustling metropolis. And there's 6th Street, which feels tight and compact but also somewhat cozy, almost like a second home. And Ballet Twins Road gives off that feeling that while the city is safe and people can live normal lives, there's still the looming threat which has caused parts of the city to become abandoned and show little to no signs of people living there. I think that Hoyoverse has a knack for creating interesting worlds and beautiful sightlines, but Zenless is the most dynamic feeling one so far. Like the city of New Eridu feels lived in. People walk the streets and have lives outside of what we're doing. I mean, cities in Genshin and Star Rail feel so empty compared to the living city of New Eridu. However, just like Genshin and Star Rail, this city holds a vast and interesting history with lore that is so goddamn confusing. Look, This happens in pretty much every game they have. They start off with the very broad concepts that get bogged down in a myriad of details. I'ma keep it simple for you. In New Eridu, there are these things called hollows that suddenly started opening up, and anyone inside of them will be corrupted into horrible monsters. But some people can resist the corruption for long enough to explore these hellholes and collect the resources inside. But exploring these things is easier said than done, since they tend to shift their layout all the time, so anyone who wants to navigate these needs the help of a proxy, like our two main characters, who can find paths in and out of the hollow. Now, I cut out a lot of details, but that's the gist of it. Hollow bad, but valuable. Now that we have all of that out of the way, I want to talk about the real reason to play Zenless.
You walked right into this one.
Oh yes, this is why I'm obsessed with this game. This combat is so tight. It feels absolutely amazing when you get into that flow state and really start to go to town on motherfuckers. I mentioned earlier that neither of Hoyo's previous attempts at action combat really grasped me. Impact Thorns was flashy but overall lacked substance and was rather easy. And Genshin's was just so goddamn repetitive that getting into combat was more annoying than actually fun. But Zenless's combat, I wish I could play it more. Like, seriously, when I get into combat encounters, I am hyped to fight. Let's break it down. You have 3 buttons for doing damage, a button for dodging, and 2 buttons to swap characters. Take 3 characters in any fight, and if you take characters of the same element or of the same faction, you'll get a little boost to that character's abilities. I will say, this kinda does restrict character building, making it less likely for you to find strange synergy between 2 characters. It's possible that this will become less of a problem as the more units come out, but I think this faction/action requirement could get pretty annoying for free-to-plays. Haha, okay, so this video took me so long to make that they actually released a new character called Xingyi, who doesn't need someone of the same attribute or faction. She needs someone who's an attacker type, and that's it. So I guess there might be more room for more interesting building that's a lot more generic than attribute and faction, I feel like. So once you choose your 3 characters, you are ready to fight. Your basic attack is your bread and butter, the thing you'll probably be using the most. Nothing too complicated here. However, there are some characters at certain points in their basic attack combo that can change it to vary if you vary your presses. Then there's the special attack, which is split into 2 forms, regular and EX. Regular can be done at any time by pressing the special attack button, but the EX version, which does more damage and usually has a special effect on your character kit, can only be executed when you reach a certain amount of energy on the bar below your character's health. If the bar is pink, that means your EX is ready to be used. Your last damage button is the ultimate button, which is kinda interesting. In combat, depending on how well you do, you gain points which can be seen up here. Once you reach 3000, you can use an ultimate, but these points are shared between all characters. Meaning, once you use an ultimate, no one else can use one until you gain 3000 points again. Now, most of the time, this comes down to you using your DPS's ultimate. And that's that. but it is sometimes worth it to use support characters' ult, especially if they buff your team when doing so. Now, this is all well and good, but there is one mechanic in the game that is the reason I fawn over it. Perfect assists.
You're weak spot. Get lost. Alpha's here.
Hoyo went so fucking hard on this sound, like goddamn. It's so satisfying, and pulling these off gives you such a rush, man. And the controls in this game are so tight that it never feels like the game's fault if you mess these up. It's always down to you whether you fail or succeed. But you can't rely on them too hard because you can use a certain amount before you run out and have to replenish them. How do you do that? Well, with another mechanic that I enjoy quite a bit, stun. See this yellow bar beneath the enemy's health? That's their stun bar. And when it starts flashing like this, it means they are stunned, and you can follow up with chain attacks. All you need to do is hit them with the end of a basic combo chain or with a special attack, and you're chain attacking, baby. These are super satisfying as well, and deal a ton of damage. I feel like the combination of using parries to build up stun, then using chain attacks to regain parries is an absolutely amazing feedback loop. It makes you feel like a badass, especially when you're facing down some big ass monster and it block its attack just to stun it and unleash a huge burst of damage. It's tight. Tight as fuck. That's it now. It's tight. Tight as fuck. Just change it. Just change the script. Scripts don't matter. Though I will say the combat is not perfect. There are times when it gets a bit repetitive due to its simpler nature. I have definitely had more robust and fluid combat systems in other games, but I think the combat here is solid enough to keep people interested. And its simple nature can actually lead to a form of mastery that allows players to get really good if they practice. Me though, still working that. Plus, I do believe at least the repetition issue will be fixed as new characters come out and people are able to build multiple teams, allowing for more variety in playstyles and team building. But that's only the A part of the game. What about the RPG part? Well, it's fine. Look, if you've played a Hoyoverse game, you know how this works. Each character has a set of skills that can be upgraded with materials gained from playing the resource missions. Each agent can also equip a weapon, called the W engine, and 6 drive discs. If you've played Genshin, these are artifacts. They have set bonuses and main and substats, the usual. We can all be honest here. Making builds in the game is not complicated. Here's my universal guide for how to build every character of each class until the heat death of the universe, because we all know that's coming before Hoyoverse ever shuts down. Okay, step 1, choose your agent. Step 2, look at whatever stat they have highlighted in yellow. Step 3, equip everything that has that stat on it. Now, you know how to build your ZZZ character. Congratulations, go do a billion damage. Okay. I may be being a bit cynical here, but to say building a character in any Hoyo game is complicated would be a lie. In all of them, it basically takes a few seconds looking at their kit for you to decide whatever stat you need to max out on, and just jam that stat onto the character as much as possible. Sure, if you want to min-max, you can look more into what stats you want as secondaries, so you can fine-tune your build to perfection. Take Shokako for example. She's a support, but her support skills also attack, meaning she can reach some pretty high damage numbers, especially since her attack buff applies to herself as well. So if you build her with a little crit, she can become a competent DPS in her own right. Now, mine isn't built like that, because the discs I have are, questionable, but I'm just saying it's a possibility. And speaking of characters, let's talk about the characters. Wow, great transition. Pointing it out doesn't make it any better. Okay. It's no secret that Hoyo knows how to design characters. It's basically what they built their entire business model on. When Hoyo drops a new character, people are usually chomping at the bit to get them. I mean, the week Shu Yuan came out, I got like 50 videos in my recommendeds about her features and skills. I don't need to tell you these character designs are good. You already know they're good. But what I will point out is how it seems like Hoyo might be straying from their usual approach of having standardized models. Like, most characters actually have different shapes and sizes. Sure, a couple look like they might come from the same model, but I want to ask you, what model was Ben based off of? Was it the tall male archetype? Perhaps the child one? The child archetype. The one that every game I have to give props to Hoyo on this one for going with more outlandish designs. I sincerely hope they add more non-standard characters like Ben, Billy, and even Lycon. Especially Lycon. Is it hot in here or is it just me? Anyway, I do really like that Hoyo seems to be branching out of their comfort zone on this one. And with that, I feel like I've covered pretty much everything. Yep, everything. All the things. There's nothing else to cover. Nothing else to... Fine. Let's talk about the TVs. I've heard that people do not like these. Like, people have a visceral hatred of them. In my opinion, they're fine. I don't really get why people hate them so much. I think they allow Hoyo to toy with more crazy ideas in a safe environment. Would I call it a perfect system? No, not at all, but I think it's a system that could grow, and I think it is something that's sort of needed. Look, I've ragged on Genshin a lot in this video, but I do think there is a reason it's so popular. It's because combat is not the focus of it. It's just one of the things you can do. There's this idea in game development where you have to vary your gameplay in order to keep a player engaged for longer. Because if it was just constant combat, you'd get bored quicker, and you'd want to switch to something else. So, Hoyo's solution to this is these TV screens and city sections. Even someone like me who is heavily invested in the combat side of things can see the use for some cooldown time. And the TVs help with that. To be honest, the only time the TVs really annoy me is in Hollow Zero. Let's talk about that, shall we? Hollow Zero is one of the two premier endgame modes for Zenless Zone Zero. It is the game's version of the simulated universe, and I have to say, I'm not really a fan of it. How it works is you choose from several different zones to do a run in, each having their own little mechanics which are supposed to make them different, but leave much to be desired. When you move through the Hollow Zero, you build up pressure, and when your pressure reaches 100, you get corruption, which are negative effects that take place until the end of your run, unless removed. Now, usually I'd be up for a little bit of risk reward, but for the most part, these corruptions don't really feel impactful in combat, and for that matter, neither do the resonances, which are supposed to be this game's versions of blessings. You see, in the simulated universe, these blessings can make a huge difference in how you play, and can actually make a usually underperforming team completely broken. This is fun, as you get to feel like an absolute beast tearing through these once formidable bosses like tissue paper. It leaves an impression on you and is probably still my favorite part of Star Rail, but its successor in Hollow Zero feels shallow, and only really there to get you your weekly rewards. I understand that if they made the Resina as busted as the blessings in the simulated universe, it'd undermine the combat. But there needs to be some sort of balance between too powerful and unnoticeable. I also kind of hope that in the future they make a more streamlined version of Hollow Zero, like what they did with the Divergent universe. Hopefully one that focuses a bit more on combat. Here's an idea. How about a Hollow Zero mode that has a series of 6 increasing in difficulty combat challenges that, depending on how quickly you defeat the challenge, you'll gain some pressure. The faster you finish, the less pressure you'll gain, and at the start of each challenge, you could also gain a Resina. This is a chance for them to ratchet up the power of Resina and the downfalls of corruption. Make some extremely punishing ones that alter how you have to approach a combat situation. Really give incentive for you to not want to gain a single corruption in a run. I think that would be a much better version of this game mode. Editor's note. Hey, so while I was writing and rewriting this script, Hoyo announced a combat-focused version of Hollow Zero. So hopefully it'll be good. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, back to it. And while we're on Endgame, I suppose I should talk about Shiyu Defense. It's Forgotten Hall. Yeah, that's it. It's just Forgotten Hall. Or Spiral Abyss, depending on your sexual preference. But the point is it's the endgame that Hoyo puts in all their games. I don't really think I need to talk about it. I mean, it's fine. It gives the players a chance to show off their min-max teams and their high-end skills, or if you're a whale, the size of your wallet. It's not bad, but it's also nothing to write home about. I feel like there's something I should address. Throughout this video, I've a couple times said that a system in ZZZ is basically the same one in Genshin. And I mean, at this point, that's kind of expected, right? If you're watching this, you most likely have already been playing Genshin or Star Rail for a while now. These things are probably no surprise to you. So why did I feel the need to talk about Zenless Zone Zero and laud it over Genshin and Star Rail like it's some huge leap? Did I really just like the combat that much? And while I do really like the combat in this game, I think it goes farther than that. I can't deny that this is a Hoyo game. It has all of its DNA, from the character upgrade system, to the pull rates, to how daily challenges are set up, and to even the reward economy. It's all the same. But everything outside of that feels special somehow. To me, both Genshin and Star Rail have almost felt joyless. Like they're the child of an influential family that if they mess up or step slightly out of line, they will be punished. Harshly. Zenless feels like for the first time this family has let their child be free. Zenless has a personality to it, one that pulled me in and made me want to make this video. To me, it feels like the first time since Genshin's inception that the team at Hoyoverse were allowed to make something different. Something they wanted to make. At the beginning of this, I told you that I am not a fan of Hoyoverse. But I am a fan of people making things they want to make. Zenless feels like it wanted to be made, and not that it was forced to be. Ooh. Okay, I know that this sort of turned a bit more serious there at the end, but I feel like it was just something that had to be said. If you disagree with me and I just got way too soapboxy about a silly anime game, then let me know in the comments. Just know, I will find where you live. If you want to check out my other videos, seek help. Or click on the ones on the screen, I guess. And if you want love, then you came to the wrong place. I don't know you. Well, Paimon doesn't see her. Okay. Feels more and to me, this feels so much more natural than Paimon flying up to you. I can't. Okay. And to me, this feels so much more natural than Paimon flying up to you and being like, well, Paimon doesn't see your brother here, and why... I can't do this shit.